Lexie Hull looked like she was about to vanish from the WNBA conversation entirely when the 2024 season tipped off. Remember, this was a 6th overall pick in 2022, a player who once lifted trophies at Stanford and carried herself like a future cornerstone. Yet under former coach Christy Sides, she was collecting splinters instead of minutes, relegated to the end of the bench while role players leapfrogged her in the rotation. Fans began whispering, was Hull ever going to fulfill her promise, or was she destined to be another draft bust gathering dust? So you have basketball in your genes. Your grandfather played basketball, your dad, and you have a twin sister who you played basketball with growing up. What was it like growing up in that family dynamic? And then came the earthquake. Caitlin Clark, a once-in-a-generation talent whose arrival didn't just adjust the Fever's lineup. It rewrote the entire identity of the franchise. Her game was electricity in sneakers, and she didn't just score. She pulled gravity. The second Clark walked into Indiana, the offense had purpose, the chemistry had fire, and every player's trajectory suddenly shifted. For Lexie Hull, this wasn't just a teammate joining the roster. It was a lifeline. Hull recently opened up in interviews with She's for Sports and the Dunker Spot, and she did not mince words. She peeled back the curtain on what actually changed in that locker room, how Clark's presence flipped her career arc, and what it says about the Fever's transformation from a stumbling mess to one of the most compelling stories in basketball. This isn't just about one player's revival. It's about redemption, leadership, and a culture shift that could define the future of the Indiana Fever. The early months of 2024 were brutal for Hull. For all her college accolades and draft pedigree, she couldn't even crack the regular rotation. Katie Lou Samuelson, Christy Wallace, players with half her ceiling, were eating her minutes while Hull sat with a towel draped across her shoulders. At the beginning of the season, my playing time definitely looked different than it did at the end. So trusting that, I was staying ready, putting in the work so that when I did get the minutes all on the court that I could take full advantage of them. So I was just really proud of myself. For trusting the process and staying the course. That sting was real. From star at Stanford to bench warmer in Indiana, the drop-off was a mental hurdle as steep as any physical challenge. The basketball part the transition is really tough. Everybody out on the court was one of the best players on their college teams, definitely the best player, likely from their high school team. So it's just this mishmash of the best basketball players, and then you're playing against people that have been there for years and years. Meanwhile, the team itself was spiraling. The Fever stumbled to a 1-8 record out of the gate, a start so depressing it had fans in Indianapolis begging for answers. And those answers weren't coming. Headlines were filled with sharp criticisms, poor rotations, leaky defense, zero chemistry. Everyone in the locker room felt the pressure, and Hull, stuck on the sideline, had to fight her own doubts while the entire ship looked like it was sinking. Part of my role is just getting to the open spots, and we have such a good offense that people find the open person. So to be that open person, you get excited. You get excited for the opportunity to shoot and score and be part of the momentum. But Hull refused to let the narrative close in on her. She doubled down on the grind, sharpening her cutting, ironing out her jumper, and staying ready for whatever scraps of opportunity she could grab. And through it all, she leaned on the encouragement of her teammates, players who still believed in her potential, even when the stat sheets didn't. That belief became fuel. Then Clark arrived, and everything changed. The moment Caitlin stepped into that locker room, it was as if the lights came back on. Practices had juice again. Fans were flooding arenas, and suddenly Indiana wasn't a punchline. It was the hottest ticket in the league. Clark brought that edge, that relentless drive to compete, and she made sure everyone else matched it. And I think it's really fun because they garner so much attention, obviously, from the other team's defense. So then it allows the other players, me included, to make cuts, make reads, and they're really good at finding, those openings and giving the ball up when it's needed and finding the better shot. So it's really fun. And I feel really lucky to get to play with them. As Hull herself put it with a laugh, we play against guys in practice, and if they're not winning, Caitlin's going to do everything she can to make sure they're competing. That's not just energy, that's transformation. What Clark brought was more than star power. It was a basketball brain wired on fast forward. She read defenses like a veteran quarterback, threading passes into windows that teammates didn't even know existed. For Hull, that was a revelation. Suddenly she was wide open, finding herself in scoring positions she'd never had before. She's making passes I didn't think were possible, Hall admitted. Clark's gravity pulled defenders like a magnet, and her vision carved up defenses to free her teammates. The Fever's offense was no longer stuck in the mud. It was humming. It's so fun to be able to know that you're not just cutting to cut, knowing that you're cutting with the possibility of actually making a really cool play. So that makes it that much more worthwhile. Clark's fire was contagious. Her competitiveness spread through the roster like wildfire. Players who once doubted their ceiling now felt like they could go toe-to-toe with anyone. The rookie didn't just bring buckets, she brought belief. And for Hall, that was everything. Clark's maturity and leadership blended instantly with the team, elevating both morale and performance in one swoop. She sees the game at a bigger scale, obviously with the platform that she's created for herself, but then that's transitioned to the game. It's huge, and I think, for me, especially as a point guard and as someone that's delivering a lot of the passes that lead to shots, if I miss, she's definitely gonna say, you got the next one. I can count on her for keeping me, confident and positive. So yeah, I think that shows the player that she is and the leader she is as a point guard. And soon, the results followed. The Fever started to find their rhythm, evolving into a cohesive, dangerous offense. Hall herself admitted, the game becomes so much more fun when you know you're cutting with a real chance to make a play. Clark gave her that chance. She wasn't just a star, she was a game changer who altered the trajectory of teammates like Hall in real time. But was this jolt of energy enough to turn Indiana's season around? That remained the question, and the answer would take shape in the grind of the coming weeks. What stood out is that the shift didn't happen under bright lights in front of cameras. It happened behind closed doors in practice. Those sessions, Hall explained, became battles, not drills. Scrimmages turned into wars because Clark demanded it. If a set broke down, Clark pushed them to fix it on the spot. No excuses, no shortcuts. Her competitiveness raised the bar, and the rest of the roster had to rise with it. Coaches saw the change too. Practices that once dragged suddenly had teeth, and from that fight, a true team identity began to form. For Hull, this transformation was more than a team story. It was deeply personal. All of it comes down to trusting the process, and part of that process is making sure that the work's getting done. Hull threw herself into sharpening the finer details of her game, dialing in her cuts and chasing consistency with her jumper. During the Olympic break, we had a full month of practice, she explained. Seeing those shooting percentages climb gave me the belief I needed. That work in the dark paid off in the light. By the time the second half of the season rolled around, Hull wasn't just another body off the bench. She had carved out a central role in Indiana's offense, without Caitlin Clark's presence. Clark's ability to walk defenses was like giving Hull an open runway. Kelsey and Caitlin attract so much attention, Hull said. That frees players like me to cut and find openings. And those openings started translating into buckets. Hull's percentages spiked, her confidence surged, and she began making critical plays in high-pressure moments. Suddenly, Indiana wasn't stumbling, it was surging. As the Fever stacked wins, the chemistry became impossible to ignore. We never turned on each other, Hull shared. That unity, that mindset, that's what pulled us through the tough stretches. Fans recognized it too. Arenas that once looked half-empty were suddenly packed wall-to-wall, and social media lit up with clips, praise, and rallying cries for this new-look Fever squad. Hull described the adrenaline of home games. Playing in front of a sold-out crowd gave us a type of energy we hadn't felt in years. It's hard to put into words how much it meant. Indianapolis, once desperate for a winner, was buzzing again. All these people were supporting me this whole time, and I didn't know that they were supporting me until that moment. So you kind of forget that there's these people behind the scenes until they come out of the woodwork and say I've been following along this whole time. I'm so proud of you, and that just feels so good to know that there's, such a community behind everybody on our team, and even when you don't hear it every day. This was bigger than a comeback story. It was a statement. With Clark orchestrating and Hull blossoming, the Fever weren't just chasing a playoff berth, they were rewriting the ceiling of what this franchise could be. The only question left was, how far could this group go? And how long could they keep this chemistry alive under growing expectations? Off the floor, the Fever's rise was just as dramatic. Players like Hull suddenly found themselves living a new reality. Quick errands in Indianapolis turned into impromptu autograph sessions. The faces that had been anonymous in the city were now household names. It was thrilling, but also overwhelming. Walking through the grocery store in Indianapolis and, trying to just go get some groceries and someone fist bumps me and says, "Go Fever." That's just a really cool environment, and it shows, the dedication of the fans and the fandom in the city. So that part's been awesome. Fame, as Hull learned, is a double-edged sword. Every game came with online breakdowns. Every loss came with a wave of noise, and every win brought its own new pressures. Pros, it's pretty obvious. We have people filling the stands. We have people cheering. We have people so excited for the individual success of the teams, but also the league as well. Players, so people, there's so many more eyes on the game. Social media became both a blessing and a burden. Hull admitted that while the constant feedback could fuel motivation, it also tested her resolve. After losses, scrolling through comments was a reminder of just how heavy the spotlight had become. "It's part of the job, but it's not easy," she admitted, opening a window into the emotional toll of stardom. That's hard. It's easy to say, yeah, don't read it, but everybody does a little bit, and I think it's having, that support system to help keep you on track. Through it all, the Fever leaned on each other. Their locker room became more than just a place to strategize. It became a sanctuary, a space where the focus stayed on growth, resilience, and camaraderie, rather than the endless chatter outside. This culture, built on accountability and genuine trust, gave the team the foundation it needed to thrive in a season that tested everyone. They weren't just surviving the spotlight, they were learning how to own it. The story of the Indiana Fever is remarkable. From a disastrous franchise to one of the most talked about teams in basketball, they proved that resilience and unity can flip an entire narrative. Lexie Hull's personal resurgence embodied that lesson. Her patience, her grind, her ability to seize her moment, all of it helped fuel Indiana's turnaround. But she's the first to admit, Caitlin Clark was the catalyst. "She's not just a star player, she's a force who makes everyone around her better," Hull said. And that's the truth. Clark lifted the entire franchise on and off the floor. Indiana's rise wasn't only about wins, it was about identity. Sold-out crowds, an energized fan base, and a team culture that valued accountability over excuses set the stage for long-term success. Hull put it perfectly. We're not just playing for ourselves, we're playing for something bigger. Looking forward, with Clark leading, Hull thriving, and talents like Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell ready to dominate, the Fever aren't just contenders anymore. They're a powerhouse in the making. I think it's moving in a good direction. I think that, it's because it's more competitive and there's more eyes on it. The pool of coaches that we can choose from, I think, will only get bigger and bigger. I think we're going to have great coaches, coming up, and just excited to see, what those eras look like. It's unpredictable at this point, but excited that you'll talk out in a year from now. But make no mistake, this is only the beginning. The Fever have shown they can weather adversity and build momentum. The only question left is, can they now take the leap from being contenders to joining the WNBA elite? Only time will answer that. So what do you think? Are the Fever ready to cement themselves as one of the league's great teams? Show your support for Lexie down in the comments below by commenting Lexie Show.